Rain hissed against the asphalt, thin streams racing toward the gutter as the flashing red and blue lights painted the night in stuttering bursts. Staff Sergeant Darius Cole tightened his grip on the steering wheel, pulse pounding in his ears. He'd pulled over the moment the siren screamed behind him. Standard training, stay calm, follow protocol. But this wasn't Iraq. This was Alabama, and the two officers striding toward him didn't see a veteran returning home. They saw a black man in a tinted SUV. "License and registration," barked the taller one, rain dripping off his cap. Darius handed them over without a word, his uniform jacket neatly folded in the back seat. The shorter cop circled the car, flashlight slicing through the dark. "What's in the trunk?" "My gear," Darius said quietly. "Step out, hands where I can see 'em." His throat tightened. "Officer, I said out." The door yanked open, cold air and rain rushing in. A flashlight beam blinded him. The taller cop's hand hovered near his holster. Something inside Darius trembled. Rage, fear, the memory of gunfire in another desert. "Man like you should know better than to mouth off," the officer sneered. That line hit like shrapnel. A crowd began to form across the street. Phones out, recording. Then, a metallic click. "Sir," Darius said, voice breaking. "There's something you need to see." He reached slowly toward his pocket where the Medal of Honor card rested, proof of who he was. The taller cop's voice thundered through the rain. "Don't you move." The sound of a gun cocking split the air, fade to black. The rain came down harder now, fat drops hammering against the windshield like impatient fingers. The wipers swiped in rhythmic defiance, but visibility stayed poor, murky halos of streetlight stretching over slick asphalt. Darius Cole kept both hands on the wheel, eyes steady on the rearview mirror. The police cruiser's lights pulsed behind him, red, blue, red, blue. He eased the SUV to the curb, breathing through his nose, steady. Calm was training. Calm was survival. He killed the engine and waited. The driver's side mirror caught two shapes moving toward him, one tall, broad shoulders, the other slighter, nervous energy. The taller one tapped the flashlight against his palm. Darius rolled down the window halfway. "Evening, officers. License and registration," the tall one said, voice clipped. "Of course." Darius kept movements deliberate, slow. He handed over his documents, his military ID visible beneath the license. The tall officer glanced at it. "What's this?" "Army identification, sir." Didn't ask for a speech," the officer cut in. He turned, muttering something to his partner. The younger cop, Miller, shifted awkwardly, eyes darting between Darius and the rain-slicked street. "Where you headed this late?" the tall one asked. "Home from the Veterans Center. We had an outreach event for returning service members." "Lot of nice cars for a volunteer gig," he said, scanning the SUV. "It's my brother's," Darius replied. "He lent it to me." The flashlight beam slid across the interior, dashboard, duffel bag, folded uniform jacket. The tall cop's voice sharpened. "Pop the trunk, sir." Darius blinked. "Is there a reason?" "Trunk now," he sighed, unlocking the latch. Rain swept in as Miller moved toward the back. "You got weapons in there?" Daniels asked. "Just my gear." "Field pack, boots." Daniels leaned closer. "Boots don't make that kind of lump." Darius stiffened. "You're mistaken, am I?" The tension was a live wire now, humming. Cars passed slowly, their headlights cutting brief tunnels through the rain. Darius could feel the eyes on him, on the color of his skin, the stillness of his body. "Step out of the vehicle," Daniels ordered. Darius hesitated. "Officer, I haven't..." "Out." He obeyed, hands visible, shoes splashing in the puddle. Cold soaked through his socks. His military training screamed inside him. "Stay controlled. Don't react." Miller came around from the trunk, hesitant. "Nothing back there, sir. Just clothing and, a metal case." Daniel's jaw tightened. "We'll see about that." He pressed Darius against the hood hard enough to sting. The wet metal burned cold through his shirt. The sound of the cuffs clicking shut echoed beneath the rain. "Am I under arrest?" Darius asked, voice taut, resisting questioning. "I complied with every..." "Quiet," a bystander shouted from across the street. "Hey man, he didn't do anything." Phones came out. The glow of recording screens lit the darkness like silent witnesses. Miller's voice trembled. "Sir, maybe we should..." Daniel snapped. "You got a problem following orders?" Miller's jaw shut. Darius caught the flicker of shame in his eyes. You think that medal makes you special? Daniels muttered near his ear. Don't mean you can break the law. I didn't, Darius said. You just broke something else. Daniels froze. What was that? Darius met his gaze. Respect. For a heartbeat, the rain seemed to stop. Then Daniels shoved him into the cruiser. The door slamming like a gunshot. Through the window, Darius saw the folded jacket in the back seat, his Medal of Honor glinting faintly beneath it. The camera flashes reflected off the badge on Daniels' chest, and Darius realized this wasn't just an arrest. It was a message. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a steady, nauseating buzz that made time feel suspended. The holding room smelled of bleach and wet concrete, sterile, impersonal. Darius sat on the cold metal bench, wrists raw from the cuffs. Drops of rain still clung to his short hair, trickling down his neck. A door clanged open. Officer Daniels entered first, hat tucked under one arm, swagger replacing the tension of the street. Miller followed, quieter now, his eyes down. Daniels tossed Darius's wallet onto the desk. Staff Sergeant Darius Cole, he drawled. Army hero, huh? That's supposed to impress me. Darius didn't answer. His voice, if released, might crack. He focused instead on his breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 out. The rhythm of survival. Talk to me, Sergeant, Daniels pressed. What's a decorated soldier doing out here in a fancy car with expired tags? They're not expired, Darius said evenly. You read the wrong date, Daniels smirked. Sure I did, Miller glanced up. Sir, the system shows his registration's current. Daniels shot him a look that could cut steel. Run it again. Darius's patience thinned. Am I being charged with something? You resisted a lawful order. I complied with every order you gave. Daniels leaned closer, his breath thick with coffee. You got smart. That's resisting. Silence filled the space like fog. Somewhere down the hall, a printer whirred, papers flapping. Darius could hear another man shouting in a distant cell, his voice echoing. Anger, confusion, fear. It all blended into one sound he recognized. Power grinding down whoever stood beneath it. He said quietly, I want my phone call. Daniels pretended to consider it, then shrugged. Later, we're still processing you. I know my rights, officer. Daniels turned, pacing. You know what I know? You people always play the same tune. I didn't do nothing. You're just targeting me. You think wearing a uniform makes you different? Darius's voice dropped an octave. It was supposed to. That stopped Daniels mid-step. For the first time, Miller looked directly at Darius as if realizing this wasn't some roadside statistic. This was a man who'd seen combat, bled for a country that didn't always bleed for him. The door opened again. Sergeant Owens, the shift supervisor, walked in, gray at the temples, tie loose. He scanned the room, eyes narrowing when he saw Darius's military ID on the desk. What's this? Owens asked. Daniels straightened. Pulled him over for suspicious behavior. Claimed he's military. Owens flipped the ID over. He's not claiming. This is real. His gaze snapped up. Why is he in cuffs? Daniels shifted. Procedure, sir. Procedure, my ass. You don't cuff a Medal of Honor recipient like a damn criminal. The air changed, suddenly cold, electric. Miller exhaled, tension bleeding from his shoulders. Darius just stared at the floor, jaw tight. Vindication didn't taste like victory. It tasted bitter. Owens faced Darius. Sergeant Cole, you have my apologies. There's been a misunderstanding. Darius looked up slowly. That what we're calling it? Owens hesitated. I'll speak with the chief personally. This won't leave the room. Daniels jumped in quickly. Sir, with respect, there was probable cause. The man was enough, Owens snapped. You're lucky he's not pressing charges. Darius's laugh came out dry, almost foreign to his own ears. Not pressing charges? You think this ends here? Owens stiffened. What are you implying? That I'm done being quiet. For the first time, Daniels looked uneasy. Miller swallowed hard, eyes flicking to the camera mounted in the corner, the one blinking red. Darius followed his gaze. That's recording, right? Internal only, Owens said. Not public. Then maybe it's time the public sees what happens in rooms like this. Daniels slammed his hand on the table. Watch yourself, soldier. Not your soldier, Darius said, his voice steady now. Not anymore. Owens stepped in, gesturing to Miller. Uncuff him and return his property. We're done here. Miller nodded and unlocked the cuffs gently, avoiding Darius's eyes. His hands trembled slightly. Sorry, he whispered. Darius didn't answer. He didn't trust himself to. The cuffs clattered to the desk, leaving faint red lines across his wrists. Proof of restraint. Or maybe proof of endurance, Daniels muttered under his breath. Whole department's gonna look bad because of this circus. Maybe it should, Darius said. Owens bristled. You've made your point, Sergeant. Go home. He gathered his belongings, wallet, keys, metal case, and walked toward the door. Every step felt heavy, each one echoing through the corridor. The fluorescent lights flickered, buzzing above him like trapped insects. As he reached the exit, Daniels called after him. Hey, hero! Darius stopped. Daniels smirked. You step out of line again, no medal's gonna save you. Darius turned just enough for Daniels to see his eyes. Calm. Cold. Maybe not. But the truth might. He pushed through the door into the rain. The cold night air washing over him like a baptism. Cleansing. Sharp. Unfinished. Across the street, a teenager with a phone filmed him leaving the station. The light blinked red. Within 24 hours, that footage would ignite the internet, and Darius Cole's private humiliation would become a public reckoning. Morning came gray and restless. Darius hadn't slept. The television murmured in the background. News anchors reading headlines like they were weather reports, calm voices carrying chaos. He poured coffee he wouldn't drink. His phone buzzed nonstop. Unknown numbers, social media notifications, text messages from friends and strangers alike. The same clip looped everywhere. 2 officers detain black veteran. Witness claims abuse. The video shook slightly, filmed from across the street, rain blurring the lens. But the image was unmistakable. Darius pressed against his SUV, hands visible, Daniel's voice barking orders. Then the cuffs. Then the shove. The crowd's protest muffled by thunder. He turned off the sound. But the image stayed burned in his mind. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, his mother, Margaret Cole, clutching a newspaper to her chest. Her coat hung open, rain soaking the edges. Darius opened the door and she stepped in, eyes red. Baby, why didn't you call me? He sighed. Didn't want you to worry. Too late for that. She laid the newspaper on the table. The headline screamed, War hero or suspect? Police detain medal recipient. Margaret's voice trembled. They're using your picture, Darius. Look what they're saying. He skimmed the article. Phrases jumped out like shrapnel. Possible misunderstanding. Routine stop. Officer safety. He rubbed his temples. They're protecting themselves, Margaret whispered. You can't win against them, just let it fade. I've let too much fade already. Before she could answer, his phone rang again. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, he picked up. This is Darius. A woman's voice replied briskly, professional. Mr. Cole, this is Riley Tran from Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about the incident last night. I'm not giving interviews. Sir, the footage has over 3 million views in 12 hours. People are demanding to hear from you. Would you consider— No. He hung up. Margaret folded her arms. You can't hide forever. He stared at his hands. I'm not hiding. I'm thinking. By afternoon, a black sedan pulled up outside his house. Inside sat Marcus Dent, his old unit buddy, now working at a veterans advocacy group in Birmingham. Marcus stepped out, raincoat flapping, grin fading when he saw Darius's face. Man, I saw the video. You okay? Define okay? Marcus exhaled sharply. This is bad, D, real bad. But it's also exposure. You could push for reform, investigations. I didn't sign up to be anyone's symbol. Maybe you don't get to choose that now. They sat at the kitchen table. The coffee had gone cold between them. Marcus leaned forward. You got proof of who you are. Proof of what they did. You could sue, make them answer for it. Darius shook his head. Lawsuits take years. They'll drag my name, twist everything. They already are, Marcus frowned. So what, you do nothing? I want accountability, not a paycheck. Marcus looked at him hard. Then speak. People listen when a soldier talks. Especially one with your medals. Darius didn't respond. He just stared out the window where a car slowed. A phone raised. Another stranger recording his house. Evening brought reporters. Microphones. Camera flashes that felt like lightning. Mr. Cole, how did it feel when— Do you plan to file a complaint? Do you think race played a role? He said nothing, pushing through them with quiet dignity. Margaret watched from the doorway, her hand over her heart. Inside, the TV switched again, this time to the local police chief. Standing at a podium, "Our officers acted according to standard protocol," he said. "We regret any misunderstanding. We respect Mr. Cole's service, but we must await the full internal review." Marcus snorted. Translation, "They're closing ranks." "Yeah," Darius murmured, eyes narrowing. "But they can't control what's already out there." The camera panned to a protest forming outside the police department. Signs raised, voices chanting his name. "Justice for Darius Cole. Honor, not harassment." Darius turned off the TV. The quiet pressed in. "Feels strange," he said softly. "Watching your pain turn into someone else's slogan." Marcus nodded. "That's the price of visibility, brother." Later that night, he scrolled through his messages, a text from an unknown number. "Stay quiet if you know what's good for you." Another. Moments later, "You think that metal makes you untouchable." He stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then he powered the phone off. The next morning brought a knock at the door. Officer Miller stood there, no uniform this time, just a plain hoodie, cap pulled low. His eyes darted around before meeting Darius's. "Can I come in?" Darius hesitated, then stepped aside. "You got nerve showing up here." "I had to. I can't sleep. What he did wasn't right." Darius crossed his arms. "Took you long enough to figure that out." "I tried to stop him." "No, you followed orders." Miller swallowed. "You don't understand. Daniels, he's not going to stop until you shut up. They're already saying you reached for something. They're rewriting it." Darius's jaw clenched. "They always do." Miller's voice shook. "They told me to sign the report. I didn't. I kept a copy of the body cam footage." Darius froze. "What did you say?" "I have proof. Real proof." The mic picked up everything. For the first time in days, Darius felt the faintest spark. Dangerous, defiant hope. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you save people overseas." "Maybe it's time someone saved you." Darius studied him. "You're risking your job. Maybe that's what it takes." A long silence stretched. Rain pattered against the window again, soft this time like memory. Finally, Darius said, "Then let's make sure the world hears it." Miller nodded once. Pale but resolute. That night, Darius sat at his desk, laptop open, the glow casting long shadows across the room. He typed a message to Riley Tran, the reporter he'd refused earlier. "I'm ready to talk, but you'll need to see something first." He hit send and stared out at the storm beginning to build again. In the distance, thunder rolled, low, steady, inevitable. Tomorrow, the footage would go public. Tomorrow, the war would start at home. By morning, the quiet little town of Brookhaven didn't feel so quiet anymore. Every diner, church basement, and barbershop buzzed with the same words. That soldier. That video. Those cops. The footage, unedited, raw, had gone viral overnight. It showed everything. The flashing lights, the rain, the calm voice of Darius saying, "Sir, I haven't done anything." Then Daniel's shove, the racial slur barely caught on the mic, and the metallic click that made everyone's stomach turn. Brookhaven had seen protests on TV before. But now, the TV cameras were parked on their streets. At the Red Line Cafe, 3 old men nursed their coffee as the local news replayed the clip. "Bet there's more to it," one muttered. "Cops don't pull you for no reason." Across the room, a young black woman turned in her seat. "You mean like driving while black?" The man's spoon clattered into his cup. The room fell silent except for the reporter's voice on screen. Officials have yet to comment on the newly released footage from Officer Miller's body cam. Everyone listened. No one spoke. Meanwhile, Darius sat on his porch, phone buzzing in his pocket. Reporters, veterans, strangers. The porch railing was lined with bouquets and small flags, gifts from people he'd never met. Margaret came outside, hands wrapped around a mug. "They're saying the mayor's holding a press conference this afternoon." He nodded, eyes distant. "Damage control. You should rest, baby." "I can't." She hesitated, then said quietly, "They showed your picture on CNN. You looked strong." Darius smiled without humor. "They don't show what comes after strong." By noon, protesters filled the courthouse steps. Hand-painted signs waved through the humid air. "Honor our heroes." "End police racism." "Accountability now." Chants rolled down the street like thunder. News vans lined the block. Inside City Hall, the mayor stood at a podium, flanked by the police chief and Daniels, face stiff, jaw clenched. "We value all citizens," the mayor said, voice too rehearsed. "This department serves with integrity. We're cooperating fully with the investigation," a reporter shouted. "Will Officer Daniels be suspended pending review?" The mayor hesitated. The police chief leaned to the mic. "We see no reason for that at this stage." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel's mouth twitched, half defiance, half smug relief. Outside, the crowd's roar grew louder. Later that afternoon, Darius met Marcus at the Veterans Hall, a converted warehouse that smelled faintly of old wood and diesel fuel. A mural of soldiers overseas stretched across one wall, bright colors dulled by years of dust. Marcus leaned on the counter. "You see that press conference?" "Yeah, they're circling the wagons," Marcus sighed. "Public pressure's building. The footage changed everything." "Did it?" Darius asked quietly. "They still called me a suspect." Marcus hesitated. "You can't change minds overnight." "Maybe not," Darius said, "but you can show them what truth looks like." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages, hundreds of them. Some were thank yous, others threats. One stood out. "Your courage gives us hope. My brother was stopped the same way. He didn't survive." Darius's throat tightened. "People shouldn't have to thank me for being humiliated." Marcus met his gaze. "They're not thanking you for that. They're thanking you for not staying silent." That evening, the sun set blood orange behind the courthouse. The chants had faded to murmurs, but tension still hung thick in the air. In a small bar 2 blocks away, Daniels sat nursing a drink. The television above the counter showed his own face under the headline, "Body cam footage sparks outrage." He muttered under his breath, "All this over one bad night." A man at the bar glanced over. "Heard that soldier's a hero." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Hero or not, you don't mouth off to police." The bartender wiped a glass. "Sounded like he was pretty calm to me." Daniels glared. "You calling me a liar?" "No," the bartender said evenly. "Just saying the whole world saw what happened." Daniels tossed money on the counter and stormed out. Outside, reporters waited near his truck. Flashbulbs exploded. "Officer Daniels, do you deny using racial language during the arrest? Did you know about Mr. Cole's Medal of Honor?" He shoved past them, face pale, the cracks in his confidence starting to show. Across town, Margaret watched from the living room, her hand clutching her cross necklace. Darius stood behind her, silent. The TV flickered with split-screen images, protests, interviews, sound bites. The anchor said, "The Department of Justice has announced a review of Brookhaven's police practices." Margaret looked up at her son. "They're listening now." Darius didn't answer right away. He looked out the window instead, the street outside lined with candlelight vigils and handmade signs. "They're watching," he said. "Listening's different." Later that night, he opened his email. Among the flood of messages was one from a retired general. "Sergeant Cole, your courage reminds us what integrity looks like in uniform and out. If you need support, call me personally." He stared at the words for a long time. Then he typed 2 more lines into his own notebook. Beneath a quote from his training days, "The mission doesn't end when the fight's over. Sometimes, the fight just changes uniforms." He closed the laptop, the glow fading into darkness. Outside, the wind carried faint echoes of chanting. Inside, his heart carried the weight of something larger, something that had stopped being about him alone. For the first time since that night in the rain, Darius Cole felt purpose again, but purpose, he knew, would come with a cost. The next few days blurred into noise. Camera crews, phone calls, social media storms. Darius felt like he was living inside an echo chamber, his own name bouncing back at him, distorted and heavy. He barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Daniel's face in the rain. The flashlight, the gun, the click. Now it wasn't silence that haunted him. It was voices. His, theirs, the world's. At noon, Marcus stormed into his house, dropping a folder thick with papers on the kitchen table. "City's law department sent a statement," he said, pacing. "They're investigating you, D." Darius frowned. "Investigating me?" "Yeah, they're digging through your record. Found a disciplinary write-up from your second tour. Some nonsense about insubordination." "That was 12 years ago," Darius muttered. Marcus slammed the folder shut. "Doesn't matter." They're trying to smear you before the hearings start. Let them, Darius said quietly. Marcus froze. You serious? Darius looked up from his coffee. I'm not playing their game. I'm not a story they can rewrite. Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. You're not just a story anymore, D. You're a movement. You think all these people out there chanting your name can afford for you to be quiet? Darius's gaze hardened. I didn't ask to be anyone's hero. Doesn't matter. They need one. The silence that followed was thick with everything neither of them could say aloud. The weight of representation. The exhaustion of being the example. Across town, the Brookhaven Gazette ran a headline that morning. Sources questioned soldiers' record amid growing protests. In the mayor's office, Police Chief Harlan sat stiff-backed, face pale under fluorescent light. Daniels stood in the corner, arms crossed, eyes narrow. Public confidence is tanking, the mayor said, voice sharp. The footage looks bad. Real bad. It's being taken out of context, Daniels insisted. Harlan sighed. That's not how it looks to Washington. The DOJ's on our backs now. So what, suspend me? Throw me under the bus? Daniels snapped. Calm down, the mayor said. We're exploring options. But the narrative's getting away from us. Cole's got people marching in the streets. Daniels clenched his jaw. He's milking this for attention. Bet he's enjoying it. Harlan shot him a look. You really think a man like that wants to relive what you did to him? Daniels didn't answer. He just stared at the wall, jaw tightening. That evening, Darius and Marcus met with Angela Reed, a civil rights attorney known for her calm precision and ruthless strategy. She wore a charcoal suit, voice level but razor sharp. I reviewed everything, she said, flipping through her notes. The video, the arrest report, the statements. It's a textbook case of civil rights violation. But if we file, they'll hit back hard. Darius folded his arms. They already are, Angela nodded. Then we go on offense. Press conference, legal filing, witness statements. The footage is your anchor. But I need you prepared. They'll paint you as angry, unstable, difficult. Already been called worse. Angela's eyes softened. It's not about what you can take, Sergeant. It's about what they think the world will believe. Marcus leaned forward. So we hit them before they spin more lies. Exactly, she said. Tomorrow morning you speak publicly. Calm, factual, unshakable. That's how you win this, Darius hesitated. I didn't want fame. I just wanted fairness. Angela closed her folder. Then show them what fairness looks like. Night fell heavy. Rain again. The same kind that started it all. Darius stood by the window, watching it beat on the glass. Margaret entered quietly. They're saying you're giving a statement tomorrow. He nodded. You ready for that? I'm ready for truth. She came closer, her voice trembling. You think truth fixes this? Darius looked at her. No, but lies sure won't. She reached for his arm. Just promise me you'll be careful. The world's watching, but not all of its kind. He managed a small smile. When has it ever been? Meanwhile, Officer Miller sat alone in his car at the edge of town. His phone buzzed with messages from Daniels. You think you're safe? You ruined my career, you little traitor. He deleted them, fingers shaking. He opened another message, this one from Darius. Just 2 words. Thank you. Miller stared at it for a long time before replying. Make it count. The next morning, Darius stood behind a podium set up outside the courthouse. Cameras pointed at him from every angle. The crowd was silent, breath held. He took a slow breath. My name is Staff Sergeant Darius Cole. I served this country for 16 years. I believed in its promise that honor meant something, that wearing the uniform protected you from being seen as a threat. He paused, eyes scanning the sea of faces. That night, I was reminded some of us don't get that protection no matter what we wear. The murmurs grew. A few shouted his name, but he raised a hand calm. This isn't about one man. It's about a system that mistakes our existence for defiance. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. I want respect to mean the same thing for everyone. The applause started small, then built, steady, thunderous. In a nearby car, Daniels watched the live feed, jaw clenched, his reflection fractured in the windshield. He turned the key in the ignition hard enough that his knuckles whitened. Let's see how long your hero act lasts, he muttered. That night, social media erupted again, clips of Darius's speech spreading faster than news networks could keep up. Justice for Darius trended worldwide. Veterans groups, civil rights leaders, and everyday citizens rallied behind him. But Darius sat in his quiet living room, lights off, feeling no victory, because he knew pressure always finds new cracks, and the next one was coming. The courthouse speech changed everything. By morning, Darius's words were everywhere: TV loops, news apps, even TikTok remixes. He had become both symbol and target. Marcus's phone rang nonstop. Angela's inbox filled with threats and interview requests. And somewhere between the noise, Darius started losing track of where his life ended and the movement began. Inside the police station, the air was thick. Daniel sat in the briefing room, surrounded by silence. The other officers avoided eye contact. Chief Harland entered, closing the door quietly. Internal Affairs finished their preliminary report. Daniels didn't look up, and Harland hesitated. It's bad, Rick. They're recommending suspension without pay pending federal review. Daniel scoffed. You're hanging me out to dry. This isn't about you, Harland said carefully. It's about optics. Optics? Daniel stood, voice rising. That man humiliated me on live television. He turned my name into a curse word. Harland lowered his tone. He didn't do that, Rick, you did. The room went still. Daniel's jaw tightened, and for a second his composure cracked. I put my life on the line for this department. And now you're putting all of ours at risk, Harland replied. Go home, cool off. Daniel stared at him, then shoved a chair back hard enough that it screeched across the floor. You'll regret this. He walked out, slamming the door behind him. Across town, Darius sat at Angela's office conference table, exhaustion pulling at his shoulders. The blinds were half closed, sunlight slicing the room into harsh stripes. Angela spread out papers. The DOJ's Civil Rights Division just called. They're opening a formal inquiry into the department. Marcus exhaled. That's good, right? Angela nodded slowly. It's progress. But it also paints a bigger target on Darius. Darius leaned back. Let them look. I've got nothing to hide. She studied him. That's not the point. You're up against a system that's scared of losing control. Fear makes people dangerous, he met her gaze. Fear made them pull that gun. I'm done living small to make anyone else comfortable. Angela's eyes softened. I respect that. But promise me something. What's that? When this gets worse, and it will, you stay smart. You don't give them an inch to twist your words, he nodded. I'll give them truth. That's all I've got left. By late afternoon, Marcus and Darius drove through the center of town. A crowd had gathered outside the police station. Signs, chants, cameras. Justice for Darius. Accountability. Not excuses. Somewhere across the street, a smaller group chanted back, Support the blue. Law and order. The divide cut straight down Main Street like a scar. Marcus gripped the steering wheel. They're making it a war. It already was, Darius murmured. Inside a nearby diner, Daniel sat in a booth staring out the window. His phone buzzed with messages. Local reporters, old partners, right-wing bloggers offering to tell his side. He didn't answer any of them. He just kept watching the protest, face pale, hand trembling around his coffee cup. A young officer, Miller, approached cautiously. Sir, maybe you should go home. This isn't helping. Daniels looked up, eyes hollow. You think they'll stop if I disappear? Maybe it's better if you stay quiet. Daniels smiled bitterly. Silence never saved anyone, son. They've already decided who the villain is. He slid out of the booth and left without paying. That night, the protest outside Darius's house swelled. Supporters lighting candles, holding flags, veterans in uniform standing guard. Margaret peeked through the curtains, voice shaking. There's too many people. It'll calm down, Darius said, though he didn't believe it. Then Marcus's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the alert. Daniels just went on Patriot Network Live. He's calling it a setup. Says you provoked him. Claims you resisted arrest. Darius's hands curled into fists. He's doubling down. Marcus turned the volume up on his phone. Daniel's voice filled the living room. I've served this community for 20 years. That night I faced a threat. I followed procedure. This so-called hero attacked me. The host interjected. Are you saying the video was manipulated? Daniels nodded, eyes burning. Spliced, edited. I know what I saw. Darius shut the phone off. He's not scared of exposure anymore. He's scared of irrelevance. Angela's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Don't respond. Let him drown in his own lies. Every word he says makes him look smaller. Yeah? Marcus said. Tell that to the people online calling Darius a fraud. Darius stood. Let them talk. The truth's got legs longer than their lies. Midnight. A car engine outside. Headlights swept across Darius's window, too slow to be casual. He stepped onto the porch, cautious. A black sedan idled at the curb, engine humming. For a moment, no one moved. Then the driver's window rolled down, Daniel's. He didn't get out. He just stared through the rain. "Go home, Rick," Darius said, voice steady. Daniel's voice came low, almost trembling. "You think this ends with you standing on that podium? You embarrassed me. You ended me." "This ended the night you pulled that trigger," Darius replied. Daniel's fingers tapped the steering wheel. "You're not a hero, Cole. You're a virus. You infect everything you touch." Darius took a step closer, calm but cold. "And yet here you are outside my house in the rain, proving exactly what you are." For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain hit harder. Then Daniels drove off fast, tires screeching into the darkness. Marcus rushed outside. "You okay?" Darius exhaled slowly. "He's cracking," Marcus frowned. "You think he'll stop?" Darius looked toward the vanishing headlights. "No, I think he's just getting started." The next morning, the headlines hit. "Disgraced officer threatens victim outside home." "DOJ expands inquiry. Federal charges possible." Daniels was officially suspended. The department went silent. But silence didn't mean peace, because somewhere deep down, Darius felt it, something dangerous still brewing, something ready to snap. As he watched another sunrise through tired eyes, he realized that justice wasn't a finish line, it was a battlefield, and he wasn't done fighting yet. Morning came gray and slow, like the world itself was holding its breath. Darius sat at the edge of his bed, uniform jacket folded beside him. Not his military one. That stayed in the closet, sacred and untouched, but a dark blazer Angela had told him to wear for court. Today wasn't about combat. It was about truth. The courthouse was a fortress of glass and whispers. Reporters lined the steps, microphones outstretched like weapons. Cameras clicked in flurries as Darius stepped out of the car with Angela and Marcus. "You ready?" Marcus asked quietly. Darius nodded once. "No, but I'm here." They pushed through the crowd, flashes stinging his eyes, the air thick with shouted questions. "Sergeant Cole, do you forgive him? Is the video authentic? Are you seeking compensation or justice?" He didn't answer. He just kept walking, every step heavy but deliberate. Inside, the marble echoed beneath their shoes. The flags hung still. Angela leaned close. "Whatever happens in there, don't let them provoke you. Calm is your weapon." Darius gave a faint, weary smile. "I've carried heavier armor." The hearing room filled fast. On one side sat community members and veterans who'd come to support him. On the other, officers in pressed uniforms, lips tight, eyes cold. Daniels entered last, hair disheveled, face drawn. The swagger was gone, replaced by something sharp and brittle. He didn't look at Darius. When the judge took her seat, silence fell. Angela rose first. "Your Honor, this case isn't just about a traffic stop. It's about what happens when authority goes unchecked, when bias turns protocol into punishment." She gestured toward Darius. "My client served this country with honor, yet he was treated as a suspect before he ever spoke a word. The footage doesn't just show misconduct, it shows a man's dignity being stripped in public view." The judge nodded slightly, expression unreadable. Then it was the defense's turn. Daniels' lawyer, a slick man with a polished tie, stood. Officer Daniels responded to what he perceived as a threat. "My client acted within the bounds of training. The footage has been edited and the public outcry has made a fair hearing nearly impossible." A low murmur rippled through the room. Angela stood again. "With the court's permission, I'd like to play the unedited body cam footage." The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life, rain, flashlights. Darius's calm voice. Daniels' command. The click of the safety. The video ended in silence. Then a single voice, a woman in the gallery on, whispered, "He could have died." The judge's gavel struck once. "Order." After recess, Daniels took the stand. Angela approached slowly, her tone gentle but precise. "Officer Daniels, you testified that Sergeant Cole resisted arrest. Is that correct?" He nodded, eyes fixed ahead. "Can you describe how?" He wouldn't comply. "He challenged me." "Challenged how?" He looked me in the eye. "That's defiance." Angela paused, letting the absurdity hang in the air. "So looking at you, that was the threat?" Daniel's jaw flexed. "You don't understand what it's like out there. You hesitate, you die." Angela leaned in. But you weren't facing a threat, were you? You were facing a man in uniform. A man who said he served. Daniels's eyes finally met Darius's. He disrespected me. Angela's voice sharpened. Respect isn't a weapon, officer. And it's not yours to demand at gunpoint. Daniels flinched, the room holding its breath. The judge cleared her throat. That's enough, continue. Angela straightened, calm again. No further questions. During lunch recess, Darius sat on a bench outside, the courthouse steps crowded with supporters. A young black kid approached, maybe 16, eyes wide. Sir, my dad says you're brave. He said you stood your ground without fighting back. Darius looked at him, the boy's voice trembling slightly. You scared? The boy nodded. Sometimes. When cops drive by, I don't breathe till they're gone. Darius swallowed hard. Then you keep breathing. You keep walking. You make them see you. The kid nodded, then disappeared into the crowd. Marcus watched him go. You just gave him something they can't take back. Darius didn't smile. I just told him the truth. Back inside, closing arguments began. Angela's voice was steady, almost quiet. Justice isn't about vengeance. It's about balance, about a system that protects all its citizens equally. If a decorated soldier can be treated as disposable, then who among us is safe? She turned toward Daniels. You wore that badge to serve. Instead, you weaponized it, and now accountability looks like punishment because it's the first time you faced it. Daniels' attorney objected, but the judge let her finish. Angela faced the bench. Your Honor, we're not asking for miracles. We're asking for recognition. For truth to mean more than convenience. She sat down slowly. The judge recessed the hearing for deliberation. Hours later, as the courtroom waited, the tension became suffocating. The judge returned, her expression grave. In the matter of Sergeant Darius Cole versus Officer Rick Daniels in the Brookhaven Police Department, the court finds that Sergeant Cole's civil rights were violated. Officer Daniels's conduct constitutes abuse of authority and excessive use of force. The department is ordered to issue a formal apology and pay damages. Officer Daniels' certification is revoked pending criminal review. Gasps broke out. The gavel struck once more. Court adjourned. Outside, the courthouse erupted in cheers. Reporters swarmed. Marcus hugged Darius tight. You did it, man. You did it. But Darius's eyes stayed distant. No, Marcus, we did it. But this... He gestured to the crowd, the chaos, the flashing lights. This isn't victory. It's the start of a reckoning. Angela stepped beside him, voice low. Reckonings are messy. But they move the world, he nodded slowly. Let's hope so. Later that night, Daniel sat alone in his empty house. His badge lay on the table next to a letter from Internal Affairs. Suspended, disgraced, forgotten. He stared at the TV. Footage of Darius shaking hands with community leaders, crowds chanting his name. Then he turned the TV off. In the silence that followed, he whispered, You win. But even he didn't sound sure whether it was defeat or relief. Meanwhile, Darius stood outside his porch, rain falling light and steady. Margaret joined him, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. Feels like the rain's been following us, she said softly. He smiled faintly. Maybe it's just trying to wash something clean. She looked up at him. And do you feel clean? He hesitated. No, but I feel seen. She reached for his hand. That's a start. They stood there in the quiet, the storm finally easing. Inside, his phone buzzed. Another news alert, another headline. He didn't read it. For the first time in weeks, Darius let himself just breathe. Because justice wasn't the end. It was the beginning of accountability. And somewhere, beneath the roar of the world, a reckoning had begun. The verdict changed the town. But it didn't heal it. Brookhaven split down invisible lines. Neighbors stopped waving, officers quit, and talk radio burned day and night with argument. Justice had come, but peace hadn't followed. For Darius Cole, the silence after victory was louder than any protest. A week later, he sat on his porch watching the mail truck roll past. Margaret brought him coffee in a thin envelope. From the Department of Defense, she said. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single letter, an official commendation for exemplary conduct in defense of civil rights. At the bottom, a handwritten note from his old commanding officer. You fought another kind of war, Sergeant. One just as real. Darius smiled faintly, folding it back into the envelope. Never thought a medal would feel heavier off the battlefield. Margaret sat beside him. You didn't do this for medals. I didn't do it for fame either, he said quietly. But I didn't realize how much both cost. Downtown, murals were being painted on the old brick wall beside City Hall. Faces of veterans, children, activists. Above them, someone had written in bold letters, "Dignity is not optional." Marcus stood there with a camera crew, calling to Darius on the phone. You need to come see this, man. Whole neighborhood's out here. I don't need the attention, Darius said. This isn't about attention, Marcus replied. It's about ownership. They're painting you, the man who stood up when the rest of us stayed quiet. Darius hesitated, then sighed. All right. 10 minutes. When he arrived, the crowd parted naturally. Children waved small flags. A few older veterans saluted quietly. The mural stretched across 20 feet of wall. Darius in his military uniform. One hand raised, the other open, eyes steady. A teenage girl on a ladder called down. We wanted to show strength that doesn't need anger. Darius looked up, voice soft. You did. An older man stepped forward. Officer Miller out of uniform. Didn't think you'd want to see me? He said. Darius's eyes met his. You did what was right when it wasn't safe. That's enough for me. Miller nodded, guilt thick in his voice. For what it's worth. I'm sorry it took me that long. It took the world that long, Darius replied. Later that evening, Angela held a press conference on the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed, reporters crowded. She stood with calm authority. Sergeant Cole's case is closed. But our fight isn't. This isn't about one man, one video, or one verdict. It's about a system that has to look at itself and decide whether justice is principle or performance. Reporters shouted questions. Will there be criminal charges against Officer Daniels? The DOJ is still reviewing, she answered evenly. And whatever comes next, we'll be ready. Darius stood behind her, hands in his pockets. He didn't smile, didn't wave. He just watched. When the cameras finally lowered, Angela turned to him. You sure you don't want to speak? I already did, he said softly. The rest is theirs to say. That night, Daniel sat in a bar 2 towns over, surrounded by silence. No badge, no brothers in blue. Just him and the flicker of a television replaying Darius's press conference. He stared for a long time, whiskey untouched. Then he muttered under his breath, You got what you wanted. But the words sounded hollow, even to him. He turned off the TV, leaving the bar in darkness. No cameras, no crowds, just consequence. 2 days later, a letter arrived at Darius's doorstep. No return address. Inside was a single sentence, handwritten, You changed something. He turned it over, blank on the back. No signature. No name. Margaret looked at it. Who's it from? Darius smiled slightly. Doesn't matter. Whoever it is, they saw it. He slipped it into the same folder as the DOJ letter, the kind of folder people kept for proof that the world had once listened. Sunday morning, the church bells rang for the first time since the protest began. The pastor's sermon was quiet but pointed. Forgiveness isn't surrender. It's a door we open for healing, not forgetting. Darius sat near the back, head bowed, fingers intertwined. After service, a little girl ran up to him, clutching a paper drawing. Stick figures. A brown man in a green uniform, a police car, and a big yellow sun. I drew you, she said proudly. You look strong. He knelt down, smiling gently. You made me look better than I am, she giggled. Mom says heroes don't always wear capes. He looked at her, so small, so sure. Your mom's right. As she skipped away, Margaret whispered, You gave her something to believe in. He looked at the drawing again. I just gave her a story that ended right for once. That evening, the sun sank behind the rooftops of Brookhaven. The streets were calm, no sirens, no chants. Just the hum of life trying to return to normal. Darius stood by his porch railing, watching the light fade. Marcus joined him, 2 beers in hand. Feels strange, doesn't it? Marcus said. What does? When the noise stops. When you realize you survived it. Darius nodded. Survival's not peace, though. No, Marcus said. But it's the start of something bigger. They clinked bottles quietly. For a while, neither spoke. The world felt fragile but honest, like a wound beginning to scar. Finally, Darius said, You think they'll forget? Marcus looked out over the quiet town. Maybe. People forget everything eventually. But not everyone. Darius smiled faintly. That's enough for me. Before heading inside, he glanced once more at the folded uniform through the window, the one he'd worn before any of this began. He didn't see a soldier or a symbol anymore. He saw a man who refused to bow to fear. He whispered to himself, voice steady, still standing. Then he turned off the porch light, letting the night settle around him. Calm, unbroken, earned, because justice wasn't perfect, but it was possible. And that finally was enough. The world didn't change overnight, but it changed somewhere. Weeks after the verdict, the video that started it all was no longer just a viral clip. It was a case study, a classroom lesson, a protest chant. News anchors moved on. Influencers shifted trends, but in corners that used to be silent, voices began to rise, and across the country people started asking the same question. What do we do now? In Washington, a congressional subcommittee replayed the footage again, not for shock, but for accountability. Angela stood in front of them, her posture composed, her tone surgical. We're not asking for sympathy, she said. We're demanding systems that don't require men like Sergeant Cole to risk everything for a fair hearing. A senator leaned forward. Do you believe this case represents a larger pattern? Angela met his gaze. Sir, it is the pattern. We're just finally admitting it. Silence followed. Cameras clicked. Somewhere in that silence, progress began to hum. Faint but real. Meanwhile, in Brookhaven, the world tried to rebuild itself. Murals brightened the streets. Cafes reopened. Children walked to school holding hands past walls that had once been barricades. The old train station, where Darius had once waited, handcuffed and humiliated, now bore a plaque. Here stood a man who refused to be unseen. Dedicated to Sergeant Darius Cole. 2025, Marcus recorded the unveiling on his phone, his voice steady with emotion. Not every revolution needs fire. Some start with one man saying no. The crowd applauded softly, respectful, reverent. Darius wasn't there. He didn't need to be. He was miles away, standing on the edge of a quiet field near his childhood home. Morning fog clung low, birds carving paths through the pale light. Margaret approached holding 2 travel mugs. Thought you'd be at the ceremony, she said. I've seen enough ceremonies, he replied. I just needed to remember where I came from. He looked out over the land, the place where his father had taught him to stand straight. To speak slow, to never let the world define his worth. You think it's over? Margaret asked softly. No, Darius said. But it's quieter now, like the storm moved on. Margaret smiled faintly. Maybe it's resting. Waiting for the next voice, he nodded. Then I hope they're ready. Back in town, a new recruit at the police academy filled out her training form. She was 19, Latina, first in her family to wear the badge. On the reason for joining line, she wrote, to protect and listen. When the instructor asked who inspired her, she smiled shyly and said, a veteran from Brookhaven. The instructor nodded, not knowing the story, but knowing the weight those words carried. And so the echo began again, soft, distant, growing. Months later, Darius received an invitation in the mail, a keynote speaker request for a university civil ethics summit. He read it twice, chuckling. Margaret looked over his shoulder. Are you going? I don't know if I'm a speaker, he said. I just told the truth once. That's exactly why they need you, she replied. He thought for a moment, then smiled. Maybe it's time someone else told it too. He picked up the phone, dialing Marcus. Hey, he said. You ever wanted to teach? Marcus laughed on the other end. Only if the students can handle the truth. Darius grinned. Then they'll need both of us. That spring, Angela visited Brookhaven again. She stopped by the mural, faded slightly from rain but still powerful. As she stood there, a young boy on a bike slowed beside her. You knew him? The boy asked. Angela nodded. Still do. He was on the news, the boy said proudly. My dad says he made people listen. Angela smiled. That's the hardest thing to do. Then she looked up at the painted eyes staring back at her, steady, unbroken, and whispered, You did it, Sergeant. You made them listen. In the months that followed, think pieces appeared. Podcasts debated ethics and power. Documentaries spliced the video with interviews, framing Darius as both hero and symbol. Some criticized, some glorified, but all remembered, and that he realized was enough. Because echoes don't need applause. They just need space to carry. On a quiet evening near summer, Darius sat outside his home as the sun dipped behind the trees. The radio hummed softly, a talk show discussing the coal doctrine, a term he'd never invented but somehow owned. Margaret came out, resting her hand on his shoulder. "They're still talking about you," she said. He smiled faintly. "Then maybe they're still learning." A breeze stirred the grass. In it, he thought he could almost hear the distant rhythm of chants, the low hum of engines, the faint voice of every person who'd stood up because he had. It wasn't noise anymore. It was a chorus, and for the first time it sounded like hope. Later he wrote a single line in his worn notebook, the same one he'd carried since his army days. Sometimes the fight isn't about winning. It's about being remembered long enough to make winning possible. He closed the book, placed it beside his medals, and watched the last light fade. The world kept turning, imperfect, unhealed, alive, and somewhere between silence and justice, between loss and legacy, Darius Cole's echo continued, not loud, but lasting,